Okay, welcome to the Inclusion Trifecta. We want to thank you for joining us this morning and taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us. We are excited to share our inclusion journey with you.
And the twists and the turns that make up our roadmap to This Is Us. Everybody needs a little music in their life.
On the road again. Just can't wait to get on the road again. My love is making music with my friends. I can't wait to get on the road again.
So this is Julie and I. Last summer, we decided because of COVID, our kiddos weren't able to come back to school night or meet the teacher night. And so we hadn't met their parents, nor had we met the students. So we decided we were going to take back to school night on the road again with them. And one afternoon, we went and visited each and every student's house and got to meet the parents, see the students on their own turf, if you will. And it was rather eye-opening, I think, both for Julie and I. The reward that came from this one afternoon far exceeded the time that we gave up in our summer. And in
Absolutely.
fact, we're planning on doing it again this next year. It was so valuable. So.
We will take it on the road again. Often we would go, Julie, sometimes she couldn't remember all the kids in the classroom. So she would go, oh, you mean the one that lives out there on the hill by the house that had the big party? And so it was a good way for us just to even remember and think of the kids. And not only that, I heard from many of my colleagues this year, man, I never got to meet any of my parents this year. Either they did phone conferences or that. And Julie and I had that personal connection right off the bat, knowing the parents and the families and then them knowing us.
So as I said, my name is Julie Culver-Smith, and I just finished my 28th year of teaching students with significant disabilities. And although the title on my door has changed over the years, my passion for inclusion and co-teaching has not changed. Every story has a beginning, and this is where This Is Us began. In the fall of 1992, I walked in to do my student teaching, and 30 little beady eyes stared me down. You see, this was a co-taught classroom long before its time in kindergarten. My supervising teacher approached me and she said, we have 5 students in this classroom. Your first objective is to find them. Well, by the end of the day, I still wouldn't lay money on student number 5. I couldn't find them. I could not pick them out amongst their peers. So flash forward to the year 2017. It was time for me to go back to my roots. I needed a change, and so I approached Julie.
And I just finished my 23rd year of teaching, 20 years in first grade now. I actually started out in special education as a moderate teacher at the high school level. So when Julie approached me, I definitely thought of some pros and some cons, but after teaching special education, the more I thought about it, I thought, this is really what's best for all kids. And I thought, for me, I'm getting the best of both worlds because now I'm kind of going back to my special ed roots. And I'm still teaching gen ed, but I leave all that paperwork and all the fun stuff really to Julie, and I get to do more of the fun things, although we do share and collaborate.
Don't let her fool you, yes. We do most of that together.
With the IEP goals and stuff. I just don't have to write it all. So now we would like to have you actually take a little poll for us, if you would. And we would like to know where you see your inclusive mindset at this very moment. So if you would fill out our poll for us. So where do I see my inclusive mindset? Yes, let my journey begin. I am for it, but would just need more information on inclusion in my role, or I don't think I would. I do not want it to affect my evaluation or anything else, or absolutely not for me. If I do this, I would have to give up control and there's just no time. Oh, awesome.
Glad to see. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, you've definitely come to the right place.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Just give it another couple seconds. All right, great. Well, that is definitely what we'd like to see. Okay, thank you. Okay, so our inclusion philosophy. What would happen if we explored a new concept in education where the word inclusion is captured in an all-embracing societal ideology, where all teachers and students, including those with more significant cognitive and physical disabilities, will learn alongside each other in multiple learning environments?
So everything has benefits, or we wouldn't do them to begin with. And some benefits that Julie and I have uncovered and discovered for inclusion is the following. First of all, it gives us all the opportunity to learn about diversity and equality. In the world that we live in today, these two topics are at the forefront of our lives. And what a better way for students and staff, we like to think that all of us are benefiting from this, to learn about these as to be immersed into a culture that promotes diversity and equality. Along with that goes the understanding for empathy and awareness of ones who are not only diverse learners, but people that come from a different cultural, ethnic, and socioeconomic background. Another benefit, and I think probably one of the top benefits, is the friendships that get to be formed. Again, I'm going to say friendships not only for students, because those are automatics, those go hand in hand, but also opportunities for friendships to develop with staff. Although I've always worked down in that first grade pod, to say that I was really good friends with Julie or the other first grade or kindergarten teachers, we were colleagues. I don't know that we would share outside information and things that we do on our own time and family information had I not been immersed into this culture. Finally, there's the confidence. And I think inclusion gives everybody the confidence to step outside your box, get outside your zone where you feel most comfortable. And I'm not saying that's an easy thing to do, but it gives everybody the opportunity to take the phrase, I can't, and turn it into a different mindset of, you know what, do I have to lose? I'll try. The phrase personal best, you can hear that being yelled, I will say. I like to get the class really loud and she keeps the class kind of quiet. That's dad and mom. But anyway, you'll hear the words personal best being echoed from our classroom frequently.
Absolutely. And haven't we always been told that two heads are better than one? With inclusive practices, we're collaborating and we're bouncing ideas off each other all the time. We collaborate on lesson planning and lessons often, which helps bring our unique styles and ideas to planning and instruction. More flexibility for enrichment and adapting of those lessons to meet the needs of all students. And I think teachers feel more comfortable and they reach out for help and asking each other for their ideas. Also, I think we have felt more like part of a team, our whole team. Yeah. And then a huge one is promoting that parental confidence, that their children are being accepted and can be successful in a school setting. That promotes parental confidence in their learning alongside their peers, their children are, and getting those meaningful connections. And I think one of the biggest stories we have for parental confidence and what this can bring to the table is one day Julie and I got a phone call and the parent was just in tears and we're thinking, oh no, what happened now? And it was actually tears of joy as the mother said their child came home so excited, waving this envelope. And, you know, the parent opened it and looked at it and it was an invitation to a birthday party. And this parent thought that their child would never be accepted in that way and would never be invited to a peer birthday party, you know, maybe cousins and family members, but would never get that. that invitation from a peer to a birthday party. And here that day, that child brought home that invitation to that birthday party. And that parent was just beyond joyful and very thankful. And, you know, it really hit Julie and I.
Yeah, it brought tears to our eyes too. And it still does to this day.
Yes.
So this brings us to our inclusion trifecta. What exactly is it? Well, Julie and I, over the course of our studies, going to different workshops and digging through information that we've uncovered, have come up with what we consider our inclusive trifecta. We have 3 equal components that make it up. First, you have the least dangerous assumption, then you have universal design for learning, and follow with empowered educators. We believe that you must have all 3 components to change and expand inclusive mindsets. So the least dangerous assumption. Now, don't adjust your screens. The picture up above you will see is kind of cloudy and hazy, and you really can't make out the picture. It looks like there's a building, and you would be correct. That is Ryan Park Elementary. And it looks like there's some students maybe, because there's some shorter little kiddos there and maybe some taller adults. That is actually our kindergarten and our first grade inclusive classrooms. And the reason we chose to leave the picture blurry is because you can't see labels in this picture. You don't know if it's a boy or a girl. You don't see ethnicity. You don't see socioeconomic backgrounds. All you see is a group of students learning together. And that brings us to the least dangerous assumption. What if we assume a student can learn? So we give them every opportunity that they can learn, giving them all kinds of manipulatives and tools. But then in the end, we find out, well, that didn't work out so well. So we just go back to the drawing board. They couldn't learn that particular notion. But then there's the other side of that, the flip side of that coin. What if we assume that a student can't learn? Oh, they can't do this. Oh, they need to be in applied skills classroom. Oh, they can't do that. They could never learn within that regular ed classroom. And so therefore, we don't give them the opportunity to learn. We don't give them the manipulatives to be successful or possibly successful in that regular ed classroom. But what would happen if it turns out that they can learn? You see, the least dangerous assumption is to have high expectations for all students.
And within that least dangerous assumption, all students will progress, develop, and succeed at their own pace across flexible learning environments. And that's the one thing Julie and I have is a lot of physical space at Ryan Park, which is nice. But one thing that we did with our physical space is we took labels off of our physical space. Is that we don't have labels. It's not the first grade room, room 106, or the applied skills room, room 109. No, we added other labels. One of our labels is the Disney room. Julie loves Disney, and her theme is Disney. And so that is simply the Disney room. I myself, my happy place is the beach. So my room is the beach. That's my theme. So we've taken labels off of classrooms. And if you need to go to the beach room, we simply say, head to the beach room. Or head to the Disney room. And when we might have small groups in either rooms going on, a lot of our whole group instruction is done within the beach room, but then we have breakout areas where we might do different groupings. So we might tell kids to go to the Disney room, or we have a pod area, which is outside of our classrooms. And sometimes we utilize the pod room. We have conference rooms, which we've never really used for conferences, but we might do small group instruction. We might take tests in there when we need to have a quiet area or do small group testing. We also have a sensory room. So that's within our first grade pod area. So we might utilize the sensory room for multiple reasons, not just for sensory breaks, but for other type breaks, or for even small group if it's not being used, that sensory area is not being used. So the school kind of does the same thing now. It's no longer go down to room, the first grade room, or go down the applied skills room. Even in the office, they say the beach room or the Disney room. They know that, there's no labels down at our end of the building. And even our colleagues have done the same. So, and then that use of time and flexible schedules. One thing as teachers, I think sometimes it's very hard to give up control. And Julie and I have learned that, it's okay to give up control.
Okay.
And, the students guide us a lot of times, and they know what they need best and at what time. And we many times just let them kind of roll with it. And then other times, boy, you better not change those schedules. We all know that certain kiddos do need those regimented schedules and things done at certain times, or they're just expecting that, after this time is going to come lunch. So, don't mess with schedules all the time, but sometimes it's okay to give up that control.
It's kind of like a dance, if you will. Julie and I have learned to just dance. Sometimes you cut in and sometimes you bow out, and sometimes you dance fast and sometimes it's a slow dance, and that's okay. We just kind of let the dance play it out in the room.
We're getting to be better dancers.
We are, yeah.
And then diversity, utilizing Gardner's multiple intelligences. We all learn in different ways. So, you find that way that best meets your students' needs during that instruction time. And assessments, show me what you know. And, it's not always tests. It's not always written. It's there are so many multiple ways to assess students, and it's finding that right assessment that matches the students' learning, and that matches what they can do and how they can show you what they know best.
Oh, but Julie, what about that gap? That gap gets so big, we just got to pull them out and put them back in that self-contained classroom, because don't forget about that gap now. That it's huge.
Yeah, that gap when we lose our teeth. Is that what you mean? I mean, you've lost your teeth at different times. I've lost my teeth at different times. We all lose our teeth at different times, just like we all learn and grow at different times in our lives. And you're going to hear, Julie and I have had many aha moments on this journey, and I know we'll have many more.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think one of our biggest aha moments, we were at, I believe it was the Focus on Inclusion conference, or one of the many conferences we have attended, where we've got a wealth of knowledge from. And one of the things that we heard was the gap is not evident of an inappropriate placement.
Amen.
And that was huge to us, because everybody kept saying, well, the gap will get bigger, and the gap's only going to continue to get bigger. And well, how do you include them when the gap's so big? Well, but that doesn't mean that it's not inappropriate. And it's not right, all kids all the time. We're not saying that either, but you have to find those moments and those times. All students will progress, develop, and succeed at their own pace across those flexible learning environments. And we as educators, we really need to change our mindsets to seek those benefits for all kids. And I think if we can say one thing too is, do not fear the unknown, just embrace it.
Yep. Yeah.
And we have.
Yeah, I think so. So, do you see a gap here? Thinking educationally now, what do you see? Take a few minutes and add to the chat box what you think you might see here.
And Meredith, we might have to have you kind of read some of those for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Do you want to share some of those out, Meredith?
So on this slide, we're not seeing a picture. Can you guys describe what it looks like, or maybe it's on the next slide there?
Oh, okay. So here we have bowling, and we have a split. Kind of looks like our shirts. With a bowling ball headed to one of those pins. That's weird. I wonder why that picture is not showing up.
Yeah, it's not showing at all. So let me see. Could you advance the slide one more time and see if maybe it's on there we go. There it is. It was on one of the transitions. So go back one more. Right there. Okay, now everyone can engage. There it is. Perfect.
So they're on. Okay. So, bowling for kids, triangular teaching, using that trifecta that we're talking about to get a strike. One of Julie and I's biggest aha moments came once we watched this YouTube video entitled The 7-10 Split by Shelley Moore. Shelley is from British Columbia, and she was in her 3rd year of working on her PhD when she created this 7-10 notion. This had such an impact with Julie and I one night. I think our phones were blowing up as we were going back and forth. You got to watch this one. You got to watch this one. And so now we'd like to have you take the opportunity to watch Shelley as she explains exactly what is that 7-10 split.
Hi, my name is Shelley Moore, and I'm a 3rd-year PhD student at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. As Canadians, we have a reputation for finding and embracing the strength in our diversity. This value, however, hasn't been reflected in our classrooms, which still segregate students by ability, especially students with developmental disabilities. There's a gap in our understanding about what we know inclusive education to be philosophically versus what we understand and the importance of understanding inclusion in our practice. This is the question I'm trying to answer in my research, is how can we find the value in the day-to-day practice in our classrooms in terms of inclusive education? So how am I going to explain this to you? Now I can sit here and try and describe this, or we can have a little bit more fun. Why don't we go bowling? So let's talk about bowling. You have 10 pins, you have 2 balls, and you have a lane. The goal is to knock down as many pins as you can. But if you don't get them all, it's okay because you have another chance. But when I bowl and roll the ball down the middle and I don't knock them all down, what often ends up happening to me is that there's 2 pins left standing on either end and they stare at you. It's the 7-10 split and it's the hardest shot in bowling. How is bowling like teaching? The ball is the lesson, the pins are the kids. We aim for the middle, we do the best we can. The pins that are left standing, we often have another chance to kind of get to them, but at the end of the day, those 2 pins that are staring, looking at you, are kids who need the most support and are kids who need the most challenge. So we end up choosing one, and the other one is left standing. I just took all the fun out of bowling. Now, I don't know how many times you've watched professional bowling, but I spent an afternoon watching professional bowling, and let me tell you, there was not one bowler who rolled that ball down the middle of the lane. They throw the ball down the lane at a curve. And I was actually really curious about this, so I called up a professional bowler. He was so excited. I don't think he gets a lot of calls about education. He said the reason why the ball has to enter at a curve is because you will knock down more pins and create a bigger domino effect if you enter at that angle. But in order to do that, you have to change your aim. In order to knock down the most pins with one shot, he aims for the pins that are the hardest to hit. Now let's just let this sink in for a second. We are taught to teach the head pins. We are not taught to teach the kids who are the furthest and the hardest to get to, the kids with autism, kids with Down syndrome. The part that's critical here, and it really aligns with Universal Design for Learning, is that so often the supports that we design for those kids on the outside of the lane are actually supports that all of the kids need. This is the part we need to understand if inclusive education is going to move forward in Canada. How can we find this value of diversity in our classrooms between the students? This is not just important for the outside pins, but it's critical for every single one of us. And just think, all we need to do is change our aim. Look how bowling changed education.
So, did you ever think that bowling could expand your educational mindset? I know Julie and I didn't, but then when we watched her video, it was kind of like an aha moment, like we had said. We really do try to reach those 7, 10 pins. And lo and behold, they really do. The other pins just fall into place. So just a good video to watch.
So the next part of our trifecta is universal design learning. And there are 3 principles in universal design for learning. You have the multiple means of engagement. To them. And lastly, the multiple means of action expression, which provides options for how students express what they have learned, opportunities to choose how they demonstrate that mastery of learning outcomes for them. So this is our universal design of learning as a way of thinking about teaching and learning that helps all students have equal opportunity to explore, learn, grow, and succeed. And these flexible ways give all students access to essential educational materials and needed physical space to actively engage in learning and show what they know. And we talked about that physical space. And the other thing I think of is that the educational materials. As Julie and I have started our program, one of the big things for me is Julie has a wealth of materials. She has so many manipulatives. She has so many manipulatives. So I might be starting a lesson and she'll go, hey, wait a minute, we could use, and then she'll come over with this box of materials to use that actually all kids love, and it engages all of them in the lesson that I wouldn't have had. And she brings so many unique other ideas. And so I know for that, I've been very thankful for within our program of all of those things that all kids need.
So here is a video actually in the Disney room that's going to give you a firsthand account of what, to us, multiple means of engagement might look like. This is a small language group that's made up of kindergarten as well as first grade students. This group has both general ed as well as students who have significant disabilities. And then you'll also see in here some students who are in Julie's at-risk group of students that we track throughout the whole year. In this particular video, we were working on nouns. Now that was the objective, to talk about simply a noun. So to push the students outside their comfort zone, we talked about a noun as a person, place, or a thing. But then we asked some of the higher students, what type of noun is it? Is it a proper noun or is it a common noun? Then we also have some students that just simply verbal communication is difficult for them, and actually forming a sentence is difficult. So we use the touch finger point to simply say, this is a blank, whatever the picture is. We have some students in here who are completely nonverbal. And so for them, they use scanning of pictures and selection of pictures to hand me their answer. We also have 2 students in this particular group who are Spanish speaking. And so I try, although I think the 2 of them like to giggle at me in their own little language back and forth when Julie tries to speak Spanish, but I try to bring their language to our groups as much as I can, and then share that word spoken in Spanish so that the other kids can then say, oh, Edgar or Ivan, you know, I remember when you were talking about the La Casa. And so we bring their culture and their language into this group. So take a look at multiple means of engagement.
Edgar, find for me. Find for me zapato, the shoe. Where's the shoe? Show me the shoe.
Now you will see in this video that Edgar has to scroll through each picture.
Is that a shoe?
And kind of take it out of his Rolodex. That's not the answer.
That's not the shoe? Okay. Shoe. Zapato. See? Yes, good job. That is the shoe.
And then he in fact hands
Good
it to
job,
me.
man. All right, let's help Edgar out. A shoe is it's a noun because it is it's a thing. Good job. Good job, Edgar. Thank you. Nice job. All right, Jude, are you ready? Jude, are you ready? Ready for your turn? Okay, here we go. Jude, what is that? It is a house. Wonderful. Good job. You gonna sneeze? Gesundheit, you okay? Good job. This is a house. This is a house. This is a house. This is a house. And a house is what, Fred? It's a place. Jude, can you say place? Place. So it is a noun. You say noun? Noun. Good job. House. La casa. Can you guys say la casa? You just spoke Spanish.
So, like I said, there's a lot that's going on in here. And for a stranger that would walk into this classroom, they would probably be going, that is so chaotic. But you can see all the different means of engagement that are going on in a very short time span.
You did. You had a lot going on in that lesson. Multiple means of representation. So that what of learning, and learners differ in ways that they perceive and comprehend the information. And in this picture, and it's the video, we are in our writing block over in the beach room. And we've done a mini lesson on our writing assignment for the day. And all the kids now are actively engaged in their own writing. Edgar here is, he loves to come over for writing time over in the beach room. And he does not write with paper and pencil. That's just not his thing right now. He's not ready for that yet, but he loves the Chromebook and he navigates that Chromebook very well. The only thing we discovered was that for Edgar, he loves to type, but the Chromebook keyboard is not very good for him. First of all, the keys are really close together on that. And then it's also very sensitive to the touch. So Edgar tends to have a long touch when he hits a letter. And unfortunately, he'll end up with about 10 of the letter he touches. So we found out that when you put an external keyboard on there, it's not as sensitive, and he can push the button a little easier and find even the letters a little easier because they're more spread out. So in this lesson, he knows all his letters. So the IA is sitting there helping him write his sight words. He's been practicing his sight words, and he will also take spelling tests. So Edgar is practicing his sight words. So he's doing by sound. So she will give him the sound, and then he's going to find the letter, and that's what you're going to see. Also in this video is actually our 7-10 split, because you'll see when the video first starts, the camera's at a little different angle. And on the left side of the screen is actually our high ability kiddo. And then there is Edgar, our student with significant cognitive disabilities. So with this group right in the picture here, you're going to see you actually have that 7-10 split.
Yep.
So here is Edgar typing.
Good job. Ready? Hold it.
And you can see he's learning right along with his peers and doing his job.
What letter? Good job. Okay. What letter goes at? Okay. Yep. Good job. Okay,
He has successfully learned spacebar,
It.
return key, backspace.
Where's it? What letter goes it? Hold on, buddy. Erase. Yep, erase.
See, he knew he made a mistake.
What letter goes? Oh, no. Erase. Yep. Look. It's okay. Where's
And see the reassurance that she just keeps giving him, working him through the assignment.
Look, Edgar, right here. Edgar, S. Where's S?
One of Edgar's favorite times is that writing block. He really does enjoy that writing block with his peers, and you can see he's learning right alongside them, and he is engaged in that writing time.
Well, and another thing, Julie, that I'd like to share out, I often get asked as the special education teacher, that's fine to have them in there, but when do you get their IEP goals done? When do you collect data on their IEP goals? And this is a prime example. 2 IEP goals were actually worked on during this writing block. For Edgar, we wanted him to learn to manipulate a keyboard, just simple keyboarding skills. He didn't know, specifically what the return key did. And so by working on writing using his keyboard, he is working on that IEP goal right within the general education classroom. And then as Julie mentioned before, Edgar does take a weekly spelling test, and his mom practices at home using the keyboard, just like all the other kids have to practice saying their spelling words either orally or however they choose to. Edgar just does it on the computer. So IEP goals might take a little creative planning, can get done within the gen ed classroom.
Absolutely. So here we have another multiple means of action expression example. And again, this is during our writing block time. And you can see we have 3 students here. And I want you to take a little guess as to which one you think. One kiddo has significant cognitive disabilities within this group. And I'll bet you it might have been a little bit hard to see because they're all engaged, they're all writing, and it's our kiddo on the left there is, he has significant cognitive disabilities. And on this day, we were doing, what am I going to miss most about first grade? And so this is what he was doing that whole time during his writing. So yeah, you may not see words, you may not see sentences and capitals and periods and good spacing, but you know what? He answered this question, what am I going to miss most about first grade? And you can see he wrote Mrs. Witherspoon, so yeah, he's gonna miss me. And he had, actually we do Follow the Yellow Brick Road with the kiddos, and he had one of his peers help him write that. So she got a highlighter, all the kids have highlighters. She took out her highlighter and she helped him write that, and then he followed the Yellow Brick Road. You can see he has a school bus, so he's gonna miss getting on that bus in the morning. Down towards the bottom, he's sad and he's angry. He's gonna miss school and he's kind of mad school's ending. You can see he has a lot of his peers on there too. He's going to miss his friends. Over on the right hand side of the screen there at the top, we have our kidney shaped table where we do a lot of activities and fun little groups and games and different things at the table. So you can see he's got the teacher there with his peers around that table. He's really going to miss that that group time around the table. And the bottom there, he's got a picture of the school with the windows and then all his friends. And then that bigger one is his teachers. And that's what he's going to miss about first grade. So he totally answered the prompt within the classroom in his way to express what he knows.
And Julie, can you advance the slide one more time?
Is it not showing?
There it is. Thank you. Yeah, the way the pictures go, it's a slow transition. So if you go back and just let everyone have a moment with that.
Sure.
Is it showing?
Is it okay now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. We can see it.
So yes, he did an excellent job of answering that prompt. That
was a tearjerker moment too. We're not going to lie to you.
Yeah, that That was awesome.
So the final element to our inclusive trifecta is empowered educators. So we'd like to take just a few minutes and add comments to the chat box. Who is an empowered educator in your building? Who do you see as an empowered educator? And again, Meredith, you may want to read off some answers for us, please.
Yep, absolutely. I just put the prompts in the chat box, everyone. Why don't you guys, I'll continue to monitor the chat box so we don't,
Okay.
if you guys want to go on ahead, and then as they start to roll in, I'll let you know. I'm sure.
Okay. So as we see it, an empowered educator is absolutely everyone. There's administrators, teachers, paraprofessionals. I like to refer to them as my right and my left arm sometimes. There's support staff, of course. Then let's not forget about the substitutes that come into our buildings and pick up wherever we've left off the night before if we're not going to be there. We have community stakeholders, parents, absolutely parents. And of course, all the students become empowered to use their diverse strengths to elevate the learning for all scholars. Here, example of an empowered administrator. This is Amy Haven. She is our principal at Ryan Park Elementary. And on this particular day, Amy is really just working with another student, giving him the NWEA test. It was a makeup. And so on that particular day, she said, you know what, I'll take over and make up the test for kids that weren't there to get them in before the window. So Amy became an empowered educator. And while we're talking about Amy, I would like to just bring to your attention at the end of our presentation is our references. And we have an interview with Amy that Julie and I did, asking her how she feels about our inclusive program that we're doing and what were her thoughts and feelings when she found out that Julie and I were up to, I don't want to say no good, but a different kind of
Our
good.
shenanigans.
Our shenanigans, there you go, within our building. So I would encourage you all to take a moment and watch that later on.
Empowered support staff, our office staff, they are invaluable to our school as well. And Mrs. Wolf here, she's our guru. She does everything. Students may come down because they're not feeling so well, or maybe they just need a little break, and she's more than happy to step in and work with them and help them in any way. And of course, our IAs, they are helpful in whatever we need and whatever the student needs. If we need them to take them out for a little small group time or one-on-one testing or one-on-one reviewing of some skills, they are more than happy to jump in and do that.
And we're fortunate enough here in Angola, we have a university, Trine University, and Trine has an education department, and they will send students over throughout the year for practicums. But Julie and I this year were fortunate enough to have 2 student teachers from Trine that worked in our classroom this year. And
sorry to interrupt. Can you advance the slides? When we get to it, yeah, there we go. It's a double click. I think it's a fade in and it doesn't quite show the picture. So there we go. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. So this is Morgan, actually. She is a Trine University student. She's working with Caden, actually taking a spelling test on a one-on-one situation out in the hallway. And one thing that both of our Trine students shared with us is that they feel very comfortable as they go out by being in our program this year. They learned a lot about empowered educators and universal design for learning. And I'm happy to say that both of them have found teaching jobs in special education for this upcoming year. And Morgan, in fact, is going to be in a co-taught situation in a 6th grade classroom. So we're really excited for both of those students as well.
And I just want to bring up, Colette added a really nice quote in the chat box that really just mirrors what you're speaking to. She said, this year has been the year of empowerment for all educators and staff. Everyone has shown their resourcefulness to support students during virtual learning, and I'm excited to see how these newfound skills will carry over into the next school year. So
Absolutely.
100% agree.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yes. And here you see some of those empowered student educators. The outside pictures there, every student is lending a hand to help each other out, whether it be with counting or with any fear or with just reading and making sure they're learning the skill and know what they're supposed to do. And then that bottom right-hand picture there, I just want to point out that is a student with significant disabilities on the right-hand side. And this is a 5th grade buddy. We were doing a writing unit with our 5th grade buddies on informational writing, and they were writing about animals. And it was cute because the student with significant cognitive disabilities is like, now don't forget that needs to go in our paper. We need to have that in, and it goes right there. And he kept really helping him and making sure that he had everything.
And then that picture in the center, we have to touch on that because that has kind of become the picture of this is us. The little boy sitting down, he, as well as the little boy standing right beside him, both of them have significant disabilities. And Callan, the little boy standing, is actually using the highlighter to write that yellow brick road that Julie spoke of earlier for Louise, the little boy sitting down. All the while, the paraprofessional is just sitting back and I'm there if you need me, but really empowering him to take over and become that educator. Now, the student in the forefront, that's just a general ed 1st grade student who's watching Callan so that he knows how to do the yellow brick road, and he in turn can use that to help another student later on throughout the day. So that picture is kind of worth 1,000 words, I think, for Julie and I.
Yes, it is.
So how does all this work? It all sounds good, but what about your data? Well, data is the proof in the pudding. In the next slides, you are going to see some data that has been collected for 2 years for 1st graders and a year of data for a kindergartner. The 1st grade data represents a year in self-contained model versus a full inclusive model. The students are still performing below grade level. However, the key here is to notice the gains that have increased at a higher rate in the inclusive model.
And in this first graph, this is next number comparison data, and this is a common assessment we use in 1st grade. And this was taken 2017 and 18, and then 2018-19. Now in 2017-18, it was not, we did not have the inclusive program going at that time. And then in 18-19, this was our first year using in our inclusive co-taught program. And you will notice at the beginning of the year, which is blue, we do 3 times a year is our benchmark, beginning, middle, and end. And you'll notice in the blue, they all came in about the same about the same ability. And this is my at-risk kids. So this would have been my target group of students. And then the red is the middle of the year. And you can see that in our inclusive co-taught model, they increased a little bit of a higher rate there. And then green are,
sorry to interrupt again. If you advance, there it is. Thank you.
Goodness gracious. Okay. And then, so blue is beginning of the year, and they're all about the same level. Red, we saw a little bit of a greater increase in our inclusive co-taught. And then green, holy cow.
Wow.
Look at how much. And we're able to, in the co-taught inclusive classroom, we're able to break up into bigger groups. Or I shouldn't say bigger groups, but into groups, smaller groupings, to work with those kids that might need a little more support. We're able to do that a little bit more. And boy, that really spoke volumes to us that this really helps all kids, not just your kids with significant disabilities, but all kids. Okay, let's make sure that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now you should be looking at some IEP data. Is that correct?
You are? We are. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So this, if you look at the yellow at Language Arts, yellow represents the self-contained model. We have 4 quarters throughout our year. And for Language Arts, this particular year, 2017-18, my target percentage was I wanted them to hit their overall goal at a 70% accuracy rate. And as you can see, by the end of the 4th quarter, they did in fact hit it at 81%. So that was growth, and we were excited about that as usual. Now, when we went to the 2018-19 year, we knew that Julie and I were going to be doing inclusive teaching. And so therefore, I really concentrated with the help of Julie, creating IEP goals that really aligned with first grade standards, and those goals that I felt were most functional, things that they're definitely going to need to know how to do. So I left the percentage at 70%, not knowing, you know, how well they would do at meeting their goals. So if you look at that 4th quarter again, we have 97% accuracy rate. So boy, was I blown out of the water when I saw they met that goal and exceeded it by 27%. That's just unheard of. Julie and I had heard that growth of IEP data is greater for students who are in inclusive environments. And so that's why one night we decided to actually put this to the test. We were in separate rooms and I come screaming out of my room, Julie, you gotta see this data, you can't believe it. And really, pardon me, if you look down at 2019-20, we changed it up, decided we were going to take that percentage to an 80% accuracy. And although 3rd quarter and 4th quarter, that represents COVID, so we weren't able to gain information there. But if you look back on that 2nd quarter, the child was already at a 74% accuracy rate at meeting those IEP goals. So I have no doubt that they would have hit that 80% at the end of the year.
Absolutely. And then here we hold our students accountable for the NWEA as well. They're included. And so, you know, NWEA data we gain for our Gen Ed kiddos. And we thought, you know what, let's include the students with significant cognitive disabilities in with that too. They should be taking the NWEA because that gives you valuable information as well as what, you know, where they're at, what they're capable of doing, where their next steps are, what they've already mastered, just like it does for our Gen Ed kids. And you can see on the graph that this does show growth. You know, you have some summer slide, just like you would for any kiddo, but it does show growth. And I'll let Julie talk how she administers it.
So the only difference, all of my students have accommodations on their IEP, and one of them is that the test can be read to them and the answers can be read to them. And this particular, both of these students, I pull out into a one-on-one situation. I've also pulled out some at-risk students on a one-on-one situation because sometimes, like all kids, they get a little trigger happy with answering the questions. So we want to make sure that they are hearing the question that's being read to them and they are actually hearing the answers, and that sometimes they'll give me that oral response and then I will click on the oral response, or they might do a point touch. And so therefore we, that's about the only accommodations that we really do with this test. And I just think, like Julie said, it stacks them up against themselves.
Yeah.
And that's important to see.
So one of the things we've learned is that we all must learn to have grace through all of this. And, you know, sometimes we have to give up control and we have to let the child guide. And I think from each other and from students that we all must learn to have some grace. And that, you know, one of my favorite candy bars is that Reese's peanut butter cup. And just like with a Reese's, there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's, and there's really no wrong way to do inclusion.
So here again, you have Edgar. This is when he was in kindergarten, and he's swinging a student in his swing. And I say his swing because he was kind of like Mean Gene, the recess queen. Everybody knew the green swing was Edgar's swing. And one day outside on the playground, this general ed student jumped into Edgar's swing. And Amanda Simmons, she is the kindergarten teacher. We also have an interview with her that we'd like you to take a look at in our resources. But Amanda started to approach Edgar as well as I, because we knew there was going to be a problem. Edgar was probably going to, you know, let him have it because he was in his swing. And when Edgar actually got over to the swing, he noticed the girls in the background there, they're pushing one another. So Edgar looked over at them and decided, well, if that's what they're doing, then that's what I'm going to do. So on that particular day, Edgar learned grace, and he was okay with letting somebody else have the swing. And he decided that day he would be the one that was going to push the swing. Amanda and I actually shared this picture with Edgar's mom when we got it at a conference, and she just started crying. And she said, you know, a long time ago, I was at the park here in town with Edgar, and a younger child approached him, maybe like a 3-year-old, wanting to play. Edgar is nonverbal, and so Edgar uses what we like to call his love language. And it frightened the little child. Again, there's that fear of the unknown. And the parent came and took the child away because the little child was crying. And Edgar's mom said she never thought she would ever see the day come that Edgar could play on the playground with a regular child. And in fact, he did this particular day. So just grace. We must give ourselves grace.
So we're just curious now on, we had good response that it looks like everybody is for inclusion, obviously, but we're just kind of curious now on if we've expanded your mindset a little bit. So now if we could do our last poll, that if Julie came to you now, just as she did to me, what would you say? What would your inclusive mindset be now at this moment? Really cool
Wonderful.
to see.
Awesome.
Gonna make us cry.
Yeah, I was going to say. Fantastic.
That is excellent.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So now I'm going to wrap it up. Why a triangle?
Ooh, sorry.
It's okay. Grace, there's that grace.
That's it, Grace.
So why a triangle? Yes, there are the 3 sides to the triangle, but much like the 3 sides of the triangle, there are those 3 elements. But one thing you don't see and you don't notice is sometimes in teaching, we have to pull more on one side. And so our perfect triangle here might become an obtuse triangle. Sometimes we need to back off. And so therefore, our perfect triangle becomes more of an acute triangle. And then there's always that right triangle that could come into play. So just like a triangle can change its shape to still be a triangle, but a different element of a triangle, so can inclusion. There is no right or wrong way to do inclusion, just like Julie said. This is us,
as unique as our fingerprints. This is us making our inclusive mark on the world, one print at a time. Thank you for joining us on our inclusive journey.
Have a great day.